if there's more demand, usually the price will go up, or depending on the cost of production too. And that's normally a commodity. Gold and silver should be different. They shouldn't be based on how much is the supply and demand. They should be based upon their store of value, compared to most paper assets that I believe will implode as time goes by. So the real assets to own, to me, are real stores of value, not IOUs or Ponzi schemes. And so, and I mentioned this in the beginning of our talk, the U.S. dumped like 2 billion ounces of silver in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, and up till the early 70s. They dumped a lot of silver on the market, and the market absorbed it all. Well, then we had more governments putting some silver into the market, and most of it was coming out of the Asian countries. Now, I'm looking at the data from 2003 to 2014, net government silver sales, and basically it was China, India, and Russia, the eastern countries, were selling silver into the market. It was 89 million ounces in 2003. Well, last year it was zero, first year ever. I mean, in 2006, it was 78 million they dumped into the market. And in 2010, it was 44 million they dumped in the market. Well, 2014, it was zero. And I believe we won't see any more silver being dumped into the market by any government. Now, that being said, I looked at all the information to see, okay, what did the governments do from 2003 to 2008, all of them? Well, we saw 91.5 million ounces of gold. That's a lot of gold. That was dumped into the market from 2003 to 2008. Silver, it was 368 million ounces that was dumped in the market by government. Now, if we go from 2009 to 2014, guess how much gold the government's dumped in the market? 1 million ounces. That's it, compared to 91 million in the previous period. So they're not dumping anymore. Matter of fact, they're buying gold. Russia and China are buying gold, especially Russia and China, as well as several other countries.
Well, Mr. Rocco, sorry for interrupting, but driving around, listening to satellite radio, hearing commercials on TV, I hear lots of commercials about the government selling coins. Now, they sell them limited, I think, 10 at a time, whether it's silver or gold. But I do hear a lot of advertisements of the federal government selling gold. How does that play in?
It depends on the commercials. Some of these companies that are saying they're selling gold, they're really not the government. They say like they're the U.S. government, and actually they're not.
Okay.
But there are official coin sales. There are gold. There are the U.S. Eagle, which are gold or silver. They're the official coins, but they're not really advertised on TV. Steve, don't you agree? Do you?
Well, yeah. Look, here's the deal. Anybody can buy from the mint when available. They can buy proof eagles in either gold or silver. Proof meaning a special minted coin. And the public can go there, but the public can't buy the commercial grades that the mint only sells through its 11 primary dealers.
That's correct.
And I think you made a great point, Steve. Joe, all those U.S. government mint, so many of those companies have been hit with FTC claims, Federal Trade Commission. They are not the U.S. Treasury. They'll use what I call slanguage, liar's language, okay? They'll say, officially released. Well, yeah, but they didn't tell you it was released 20 years ago, or limited to 5 coins. That's because any more than that, you'd realize it's, almost like a Ponzi scheme. But the point being is this, and this is what we've got to hit and re-hit. We have to get people to understand something. There may be, let's say, 10 million ounces in everybody's store, mine and everybody else in the country, 4,000 plus dealers that have it on the shelves. I'm just talking silver now, in any real quantity, okay? My definition of a coin store, by the way, is someone who can deliver 1,000 ounces. There's a lot of, and I don't mean this to be denigrating, but there's a lot of really small coin shops that they only sell what people sell back then. Let's say they sell 200 ounces in 1 month, and the following month they only get 100 ounces sold back to them. That's the level they play on. What we're trying to share with people today, and let me give you this question now, Steve, and then we'll get right into it. This is from some guy, I don't know what his name is. Can you, Steve, please address why there's silver available on eBay from, he names a couple more, precious metals company. I buy every week from them, and they do have lots of silver available always. Steve, meaning you or me, said there was a 4-week delivery delay, but I get my silver within 10 days. Please address. I'm confused, not trying to be an a-hole. I love the show. I'm a silver stacker, been buying silver since 2006 all the way up. There is the biggest point of frustration because and I believe Steve, by the way, I don't believe he's an a-hole. I believe he really has a sincere question. Where is connect? You and I know where it is, but let's explain it as easy as we can, because again, I don't think people understand what we're really saying. If they hear what we're saying, but they're not understanding what we're saying. Go ahead. You take your shot at it, and then I'll explain it. If I can add to it, I'll add to it. If I can, I won't.
No, it's a good question, and I'm glad people bring up these questions and concerns, because they're actually able to buy silver, and maybe in larger quantities. And so it's best to put the information out, and so people, they know what's going on, and not to ridicule them. And so the thing is, what's happened is, and I speak to many dealers, 10 different levels of shortages. One dealer may have a lot more clients and go through a lot more product, and then he has certain dealers, certain wholesalers he deals with. So he goes through a lot more product and needs to refill. And I spoke with Owen the last couple of days. I heard some big orders. And so the dealer has to call the wholesaler up. Listen, I just got this big order. And what does the wholesaler say? Oh, my God, you just put me back from a 4-week wait time now to an 8-week wait time on that product. Now,
that's absolutely correct.
Is that product the product that the guy on eBay is buying? No. There are many different wholesalers and there are many different dealers. Each one is on a different level and a different time scale. And depending on where they're at, they have different shortages. So the market, we are not seeing all products wiped out, and we're not seeing all the wholesale market wiped out. And the thing is, if people say, well, it's not in the wholesale 1,000-ounce bar market yet, and that's where the shortage is. Well, you don't want it to get there because it's never happened in history. If we have a shortage of 1,000-ounce bars on the COMEX or wherever, can't get the silver at all, then you can't make the product. So you don't want it to get in there, but it will at some point in time. So that's what's happening now. Certain dealers have to quote 1 month, 2-month wait time to their clients. And here's the thing: a lot of customers, they'll stay. They've been dealing with Steve Quayle for years. Could they get silver maybe or different places or wherever? They stay with their dealer. They stay with their dealer. They get trust with that dealer. So that's why we're seeing more bottlenecks and more shortages in certain dealers and in certain wholesalers. And I heard from the largest wholesaler in the United States, from a big dealer, that they're only selling 3 products: Silver Eagles, Kangaroos, and the 100 Asahi bars. And they're the largest wholesaler in the United States. So we need to realize that dealers do have a lot of product. But what happens if we do get a meltdown in the market? Something bad happens here in the next month or two. It's the beginning of October. Well, customers can wipe out the dealers, and if there isn't a lot of inventory in the wholesalers. So that's the problem. There may be upfront inventory in certain dealers more than others, but there seems to be a backlog of getting product by the wholesalers. So if we do see a big squeeze in the market, a big event happens, his fall, that's where the seize of the market can happen. And I'm not saying it will happen, but it can happen. So if people can get silver now and they can wait 10 days, that's good. They should be doing it. But that's the reason why we're seeing different shortages, availability in different dealers.
I would like to address that too, Roddy. And I don't know your real name, and I don't have to, but I'll answer your question. As a dealer, I am a dealer. I'm not a distributor. I am seeing other dealers that bought big, meaning they bought, let's say, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of metals. They have payroll. They've got expenses. They got to pay the bank. The bank sees that the spot price is low. They get calls from their bankers, and they have to move that money sideways through the market. In other words, I get people calling me, hey, I got an extra 10,000 Silver Eagles. You want to take them? Yes. And for the record, ladies and gentlemen, two of the largest mint authorized dealers are $5 over spot to the dealer. In other words, we can't buy a Silver Eagle today for less than 21 bucks. Okay? So that's what we're paying. So I hope I'm making this clear. In the precious metals market, you can really get had if you're too long. You had to borrow the money to get that inventory because your carrying costs, what you're paying the bank to get that money to buy the silver, obviously the downward spiral is what is pushing the bankers to feel not very comfortable. The other thing that's interesting, and Steve, I would say this, it is a geographical and it's also a size issue. Meaning if somebody wants to buy, and Roddy said I buy 100 to 200 ounces at a time, I would say this, that I get feedback from people that delivery is this, that, and the other thing. Now, companies that deliver when they say they deliver, and if there's going to be a delay, there's going to be a delay. Sometimes the post office, for the record, just to let you know, the post office now is taking up to a week to 7 days to deliver a normal letter by mail. And so there's postal issues at hand. But the biggest point that people have to understand is at this point, what Steve Rockel and I are saying, based on everybody we're talking to and based on my 30-plus years of experience, is that we're telling you that the issue is not at the dealer level, but at the distributor level. And the company that Steve is talking about was one of my main suppliers for 20 years. And I mean, I did a lot of business with them. The current company I'm dealing with is equal to them in volume. They're billion-dollar companies, both of them, the one Steve, and we're not going to name them. But the point being is that every day I have to call twice. I call late at night and I call early in the morning, because what people don't understand is that a market tick in Japan downwards, a selling off of this index or that index, can trigger orders. There are a lot of people that work on electronic trading platforms, okay? Electronic trading platforms mean that they can enter an order for, let's say, 20,000 ounces of silver. Let's take it, a real instance, 20,000 Silver Eagles. That dealer costs, it's $410,000 bucks. That dealer just had an allocation of 100,000, let's say, Silver Eagles for the whole next 2 weeks. Instantly, you're seeing 20% of his available inventory sold off immediately in the waking hours. In the sleeping hours. But it's never on a trading platform. I'm not talking about futures. I'm not talking about puts, options. I'm not talking about any derivatives. I'm talking about being able to enter your order at whatever hour of the day, and mostly big dealers do this, okay? And primarily heavy investors do. When someone calls, and there are people that call, and I won't drop any names, but when somebody calls and say, can you get me $1.5 million worth of Silver Eagles overnight? And there was a time I could have, I have to say, no, they're not available. So what those guys do is they'll scour the country, and maybe AppMex or maybe this person or that person will have them. But when everybody's out, that's not available. Then he comes back to me and says, what can I get, for this amount of money? I say, let me go out and find out. So I run out and try and find a dealer that's heavy in whatever product the gentleman wants, and that dealer doesn't want to lose money. So he said, hey, I'll give them to you, but this is what you're going to pay, Steve. I then go back to my client and say, here's what I got to pay, here's what you got to pay. He said, I want it. What I'm seeing, Steve Rocco, what I'm seeing, Doug and Joe Hagman, is now in the market, and I mean no disrespect for this, and especially to Roddy or anybody else, but when you're dealing with 100 to 200 ounces a week, and there are people wanting to buy 20,000 ounces overnight, it's not apples and oranges. And it's not the little guys who can't get filled, but the ultimate availability of the big guys buying all available inventory or allocation. And what an allocation means is the Royal Canadian Mint will give all of their primary dealers so much of their production. The Perth Mint will do the same thing. The U.S. Mint will do the same thing. It goes all the way down the line. And what we're seeing is disruptions at those levels because the mints still have to buy the blank silver rounds to stamp their image in. They still have to. And another question I just got, Steve Rocco, was this. Why are, like JP Morgan stuff, why are they buying silver eagles versus silver rounds? A silver round is a 1 ounce silver coin. It can have a medallion. It has no face value. The reason they're buying the face value stuff is because of legal tender. When you go to Park Silver in Hong Kong, when you go to Park Silver, Park means deposit there for your clients, or Singapore or Hong Kong or any place else in Asia, there are only certain forms of silver they will take. So I hope I'm answering your question. Those happen to be monster boxes, in other words, U.S. Mint sealed boxes. And so the depositories are placing demands on the investors for specific products. And because people don't trust what's going down in America, they're moving, and when I say this, astonishing amounts of silver and gold overseas. Does that help, Doug? You get it now? That why certain products cannot be available? And somebody said, well, I bought 20 ounces of silver on eBay. Yeah, you did, but you didn't want to deposit 20,000 ounces in Hong Kong. And unfortunately, people have got to understand that we can't eat at the same table the rich guys do, but watching what they do, we can get the crumbs. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, let me just put this in perspective because I still think people need to understand the overall picture. And there are people that tell me, well, you're kind of creating hype because we can still get silver here, and so there's really not that big of a deal with the shortage. Well, we just spoke about that. But again, I talk to people on the phone, dealers on the phone, and I hear huge orders that push back certain products back. I mean, a 2-month delivery times now for that wholesaler, not saying for the total product of all wholesalers or distributors. But what we need to look at is these spikes of the silver investment demand started in 2008. They've been occurring in 2008. We had one in silver and gold. We really hit twice in April and June of that year. And then we're seeing a present one. What these are I call tremors. This one is the biggest tremor so far. And if we remember, and you discussed this before, the market can turn on a dime. Look what happened to AIG. It went from $1,100 a stock in 2007. Every mainstream media analyst was talking about, how strong AIG was, and it became $30 in 2008. How does that happen? It happens because there's a lot of false data out there. It's exactly what it is. So this company that had all this value, billions of dollars in value, became it imploded, as well as many other investment banking stocks. Well, I think we're going to see same thing in reverse with the gold and silver market, and it'll change on a dime. So when we talk about these shortages, we're just trying to explain. It's like an EKG. We're trying to explain what we see in the market. And yes, it's not a total shortages of all products, but when we see these huge spikes in demand, and then it's pushing product shortages back months, this is an indicator that something is up again, something is wrong, why investors want to be purchasing the silver. And at some point in time, Doug and Joe and even Steve, we will see this game-changing event just like it took place in 2008. And when that does happen, and we could be in the initial stages of it, then you won't be able to get silver. That or much higher prices. And I believe that. So discussing what's happening in the market now just gives us an idea, a gut feel of how things are changing. And again, if we do see some fireworks this fall continuing into 2016, I do think we'll see a seize up of the silver market.
Well, thank you. I think part of the reason we chose the title for tonight's show is because look at the stress. I like the word tremor. I believe that the earthquakes that are physically taking place on the earth, the volcanoes that are physically erupting in the earth, are indicative. Look, I believe in cycles, I believe in market trends, and I believe that there's a rhythm in the markets. But now we're in an area where cycles are absolutely being changed. That's why TA, technical analysis guys, are really, they're how do I say this? It's not like it used to be, okay? And I remember the days when I was a wild guy, and really wild, I don't mean profane or anything, but in my early silver trading days, Steve, you'll appreciate this, when there was something to base an expectation of market movement on, you could go into the market. Well, all it takes is a couple of days where you're up a couple $100,000 and then a couple days where you're down twice what you put in and lost everything. So there's a humility factor there, and I don't recommend anyone playing the markets anymore in that way. Having said that, the reason silver is such a highly reflective element is people don't understand the scarcity of it. Every now and then, Doug, I'll get some guy saying, I figured out how to separate placer gold from black sand. Okay, very difficult thing to do on a commercial basis. Or they mistake iron pyrite for gold. Now, obviously, knowledgeable miners and panners wouldn't do that. But the point being, here's the thing everyone's missing. Steve Rocco just made a statement. He said the strength of the hands in the financial world are in the east. So silver and gold are moving from the west to the east. And here's the question. What happens? I'm proposing something I believe will happen. So let's just see when it comes to pass. What happens when the Chinese say, we'll show you our gold and all of our ability to back the yuan or the renminbi with gold, show us your gold in Fort Knox. Well, then comes the Jeopardy tune playing in the background. Enter sweat pouring off, the scene. Enter every form of obfuscation, denial, and we're not going to show you your gold, as, by the way, we said to Germany. The point is that the East can back it up. It's knowing what the Russians are buying. It's not knowing the Russians' total hoardings. I mean, I see Vladimir Putin holding a 1,000 ounce, or let's just say this, not ounce, but, it would be converted to gram, a 3,000 gram bar, whatever, 30,000 gram bar. And the deal is, and smiling, and he's backed up by Medvedev and all of the Russian mint figures, and I see Obama holding an ice cream cone on a bicycle. Tell me who's going to win, Tell me who's going to win. And when you've got Wall Street pandering, and I will say this, I would call this the pandered presidency of total decadence, okay? And when you're seeing these events go, you can understand why naturally people want to have some form of fallback. What about let's just talk about this too, Steve. Again, it's lost on me how people, especially I get CFPs, certified financial planners, and I get some honest ones too, saying my company won't let me recommend gold or silver physical to my clients unless it's in an ETF. But I have one guy who's very, very, very successful, very famous, and very wealthy, saying I'm buying everything I can get. The point in the physical, what